Let's talk about that annoying popping that you get when you do leg lifts. Have you ever experienced that? So maybe you're doing hanging leg lifts at the gym, or you're doing leg lifts here and you're like, why am I getting this annoying popping in my hip or back in my SI joint? So I see this all the time. And it can be a few different causes, but one of the main reasons that I see this is a little bit of instability, okay? Basically, you get a little wobbly when you go to do the exercise. And so what ends up happening is you end up with a tendon popping, usually over a bursa sac, okay? So like the psoas tendon popping over the iliopectineal bursa, all right? But it can be lots of other various ligaments or tendons popping over things as you shift, and that can be what you're feeling happening with that popping. Now let's dig a little bit deeper and talk about what we might be able to do to stop that. So join me on the ground and let's try to do some leg lifts. So if you're here and every time you go to lift your leg, whether that's straight or that's just marching on your knees, and you get a popping sensation in here, what I always want to check and look in on is what's happening at the rib cage. So if somebody is popping when they lift their left leg up and down, I'm going to want to see what's happening with that right rib cage. All right, are they keeping it down? Are they giving me that really good cross knit through their body? Same thing here. Do they need to bring that left rib cage down and in to stop the popping? So that would be the first thing I would try. So give that a shot and see if that doesn't change the popping. Other thing I'm going to want to look at is what's happening at the pelvis here. All right, do they get that little shift happening through their pelvis? So you can imagine you've got your pelvis here, and if you shift it just a little bit as you go to lift your leg, that's changing the positioning of all the joints, right? And so when you take a joint and you change the position and then you ask it to load, it might be like, oh, I've got to rub a little bit. Or this is like, think about a car when you have a squeaky belt because the belt is a little bit misaligned. That's what's going on. You might have a little bit of that squeaky belt sensation where it's still working. You're still able to do it, right? The car's still running, but you're like, this popping kind of bothers me a little bit. I think maybe it's a sign that something's not quite aligned the way it should be. So one thing you can focus on is holding that really still as you go to do leg lifts so that you're not getting that shifting back and forth. But I'd start with the ribs. Find out if one is flared up or is maybe popping up as you go to lift your leg. Are you losing your low back on the ground? And see what happens there. Now, with the hanging leg lifts in the gym, so you get in the straps and you do the hanging leg lifts, I will often have my patients that have had spondylolisthesis. So basically, if you get a popping in your back, what's happening is their ab muscles aren't strong enough to combat the pull of their deep hip flexor, so that deep psoas muscle. So as they go to lift their legs, their hip flexor is pulling on their spine, and that's creating a moment of instability within their back. All right, so when this happens, we've got to really work those TAs and internal obliques to create all sorts of stability to help them hold still so then they can use their hip flexor without creating such a flexion moment on an extension moment on their spine as they flex their hips. Okay, so that could be part of that popping as well. So it might actually be, sometimes if it's more of like a clunking, that can be a spondylolisthesis in your back. So something to look into if you're experiencing that, especially if you're getting it with any pain or numbness. But if there's no pain, then it could possibly be just a tendon popping over bursa sac, or like you'll have your iliotibial tract, your IT band right here, and sometimes that can pop over the greater trochanter, so the end of your femur bone right here. And you've also got another bursa sac there. Bursas help protect our soft parts from our bony parts, so they're great. But if a bursa gets enough irritation, it's gonna be like, stop overusing me, I'm getting overworked here. And so think about that. Whenever you feel that popping or hear that sensation, think, okay, maybe something's not aligned quite like it should, because if I was moving my leg and didn't have a rotation effect in that due to instability, then I wouldn't be getting that popping. So hopefully that makes a little bit more sense. So usually when I see somebody, no matter where the popping or clicking is happening, usually it has to do with somebody's rotating a little bit too much because somebody else isn't quite as strong as they need to be to hold you steady. Okay, so that's usually as simple as it is. It's just simply an imbalance somewhere that can be cleaned up with a little bit of strengthening, even if it's coming from your spine. All right, so dive in and figure out what is not quite as strong as it needs to be to help stop that popping, and then you will be feeling great during your ab exercises.